for a second. Um, I think it's kind of heavy, but, in a good sense, what I have to talk about. There we go. This is Twitch. There we go. This is Twitch. Let's see if it's streaming on YouTube. You and me can look together. Looks like it. For a second. I think it's kind of heavy. So, yep. And way behind. Let's see, multi-stream. All right. I think let's just start off. This is, I've got 4 bullet points, and that's it. No other preparation. It's conversational. I would like to have a conversation, as I often say. But also, we're working with the Hythloday principle, um, where I'm supposed to help you guys out with the fact that you don't know basic logic or whatever it might be. Basic logic, among other things. Um, and yet, I don't want to have a lecture series or something. There's certain things I could lecture on. I think sometimes about, talking on this channel about my model of computation. That's practical. You could actually make a living off of that. I mean, I do. But that's not really what I've used this channel for. It's a philosophy output. Preet Bharara is a Gen X. Letitia James, not Gen X, surprisingly enough, 10 years older, 6 years older than the oldest Gen X. Um, Bradley Noel, great musician, 28, not 27. Anyway, my first subject, J. Troy, the roads are icy. All right, so first subject, discussioneers, right? That's my word for me, and to be serious, and conference report, and well, who's that guy, the bike messenger? Anyway, Earl of Portland. Um, Gary in Mendham. Discussioneers. Thou art that. Red Light Rocket. Discussioneers, right? It's a community of people, like people that play chess in the park. It's just a bunch of people. What do they do? But sometimes those people travel to another city. If that city has chess playing in the park, they may partake and the communities become connected. Or maybe there isn't such a community and they still set up their chessboard and see if they can get some passerby, right? I cleared my throat off mic. It's a community. It's intellectual in that it requires intellect. But there's a million intellectual communities, not just chess. There's also the discussioneers. We discuss things. Now, I would love there are comments Oh, John Dance. John Dance. Oh, yeah, when you don't remember names, that's terrible. You're a terrible person, of course. Um, I don't know what name I've forgotten yet, but it is true. I'm not good at remembering names, and that's associated with self centeredness. Absolutely a true statement of a bias that the culture has. That might mean it's correct or not. Anyway, discussion ears. So we Twitch definitely has a less of a delay, but it's also the primary streaming target from Streamlabs, so maybe that's not YouTube's fault. Okay, so discussion ears. All of us wanting to have a discussion, right? Non monetized reply communication. Now, they took away video replies, and that really hurt this community at YouTube. It made it harder to do and collect new people via YouTube. But there's not really a better place that I know of. If anybody knows of one, please tell me. So, the discussion ears is a non-monetized, and it's not that people don't make money. Their life, some part of their life is monetized, and maybe that's even the part that they YouTube about. It's just that the point is a communication, right? Like if your subject is monetized, you don't necessarily need to make money off of YouTube. It's like if you're a fake HGTV house show, then maybe you just invented the show concept out of college and, made a show and you fix houses. If you actually have a house fixing business and you make money off of that, that's a living already. Yeah, maybe you get super rich off of the show part because of the economics of making a show, but really that's different. Monetizing the sharing of the information is different. So theoretically, discussioneers might write books or, be famous, I don't know, subject matter experts. But in general, no, that's not what we are. We're a bunch of people with our own lives that like to discuss things. Now, this is item number one on the list. I think that a good metaphor for this phenomena is that in society, the social brain, the discussioneers are like the neurons. One neuron doesn't have a big influence necessarily, though it can, but generally speaking, it's this whole vast network of connections. That's what these pictures are. Oops. So each person is like a neuron in this if they partake in the public conversation. Now, why the public conversation? Well, you're part of the connectome just by having any conversations, interacting with other people at all. But fundamentally, I think being part of the public dialogue is like, it's like being on the main base network, the hippocampus or whatever. You're sending it out to whoever wants to receive it. Now, neurons collect signals, and those signals try to excite them or inhibit them, and then they get excited or not and send out signals of various excitement levels, including super excited, hey, you should get excited, to neurons that they connect to on the output. Now, one thing I've been thinking about lately that I've noticed with, everybody getting so much negative input, trying to say, don't do this isn't for you. John, I did not have trouble remembering Earl of Portland. I was trying to remember his original name, which was Bike Messenger something, something like that. John, do you remember? So anyway, um, now I don't really think this is literally true. I think it's sort of a metaphor, like on the internet is a version of something that's like a connectome. It's not really the connectome of society, which is all the real connections people have that they don't do on the internet. And yet those people probably use the email, so you could say it's on the internet. But still, the YouTube part would be more metaphorical. But I believe that the connectome should be public and public access, um, to the degree that, you know, it can be. Certain relationships will peel off and certain people will know each other and communicate in private. That's fine. But taking part in the public communication is to me like being part of the legit neural network of society where the people are neurons, right? So it's like a metaphor where the people are neurons. And now neurons release neurotransmitters, right? When they send the electrical signals, they don't send it as an electrical signal. At the end where it's trying to send output to the neurons that it's offering its output as input to, it sprays out neurotransmitters. And there's all kinds of them. Okay, so we're going to categorize that for this video, for this point, this bullet point in this video, as neurotransmitters intended to excite the receiving neurons and those intended to inhibit the receiving neuron. Now, an interesting thing is that the way neurons are set up, you could send an inhibitor neuron to a neuron that's wired such that, oh, you're giving me an inhibitor? Well, in that case, I excite. That does the opposite. Though in general, if you send an inhibitory neurotransmitter, it will inhibit and make the other neuron less likely. And it's sort of like a trust relationship or an antitrust relationship. Like when you say something, I know I can trust you, or when you say something, I know I should do the opposite kind of relationship. Okay, everybody online is getting these negative comments trying to inhibit them from sharing their opinion, from sharing their output. Excited, a little bit, at excitement levels or very excited, trying to inhibit. Like there's just a plethora of inhibition neurotransmitters. Now, I should say in this metaphor, words are the neurotransmitters, right? So one human is a neuron, and the way that they inhibit their neurotransmitters that they output is the words that they say directed to another person. And then that person is receiving that. And you can see how in this metaphor, obviously, some people, if they're told don't do something, are going to do it. In other words, inhibition words or neurotransmitters have the opposite effect on that person, and that's that neuron / person's way of dealing with if they think they're in a system that is giving them false inhibition. Now, the fact that online, if any of this is a valid analogy or metaphor, then you would immediately see that, yeah, there's a lot of human beings, neurons, that are sending inhibitory transmissions, right? Trying to stop people from doing their output. Right, the people, they get a lot of positive feedback. Sure, they exist, and that's interesting. The PewDiePies or something. But the PewDiePies are actually, if you pay close attention, getting a lot of inhibition contact that they filter out, right? So I don't really think that anybody, even the popular people, aren't getting this huge number of uh, neurotransmitters, words that are trying to reduce their energy level as a receiver of that information. So, why would this be and what does it mean? Well, there's two things, and I'm not going to make a final conclusion. This is just something I'm noticing. Okay, first of all, we already know that our society, since Freud, has a lot of inhibitions and a lot of, hang-ups, basically. So I think that's part of it, is that we're seeing this effect of neurons sending inhibitions in the form of words to other human beings that are acting as the neurons in the social brain, and it just reflects that reality. And I think that's probably like the causal sort of explanation if you wanted to find one. However, I think there's another aspect to it, which is that people are very bad at taking that kind of feedback. I know I am. But there's some legitimacy to it. In other words, I see a lot of people, like with PewDiePie. I mean, I don't pay close attention, but let's just use that as an example. A lot of the people that are saying, "Hey, don't do that, don't say that, don't be this way," sending inhibiting neurotransmitters, words, to this other neuron, another person who has a lot of outgoing connections. Um, maybe he should be inhibited. In other words, using this metaphor, it's good that the brain, that neurons will send out inhibitions. That's like, for example, you're getting really excited. This guy's pissing you off. You need some neurons to send out to the fight neurons that want to just punch that guy's head in. Inhibit you. They send them along. An interesting thing about neurotransmitters, dopamine and all of these, I forget which one, if adrenaline is one or something, but it's funny. When you take them as a drug, what happens is you're soaking your brain in them, so all of the neurons start to get it. But the way it's supposed to work is every neuron has its output to another neuron, and it's like, hey, you did a good job. You got something done. Boom, a little dopamine. Hey, you did this. Boom, it's a little mist fed right to the next neuron. It doesn't just spread out. That's the whole point, is it's targeted. And it helps you make neural connections and stuff. So anyway, this is a way that I interpret the discussioneers, and it recently occurred to me that in terms of people giving negative feedback, which To Be Serious always said was there was too much of. She was right, is right, and yet there's also, well, there's got to be a reason for why there's too much of it. Maybe there isn't too much of it. Maybe the situation calls for too much of it, or just creates that amount of inflammation. But there is too much of it, in my perspective. But I'm just saying, the fact is, it is whatever it is. The connectome, how we're connected, and who inhibits who. And when neurons try to inhibit and don't succeed, the neuron's already inhibited, and it counteracts, and maybe it motivates, and all of that stuff. It's hard to, calculate in its detail. The point is, this is a picture of how it's working that I think is pretty useful. And I would say in my summary, I'm sympathizing with the fact that everybody's sending out these inhibitions through their negative words, because things are fucked up. We are doing things wrong as a society, and I don't necessarily want to take it negative if it's like every single person that decides to broadcast themselves and say, hey, have more than one output. Instead of just my family having one-to-one outputs and we all have 10 outputs and 10 inputs, I'm going to make YouTube channel and there's 3,000 outputs allegedly or whatever, then yeah, I can see why society's neurons might go, hey, I've got to inhibit this stuff. Why? Well, because stuff is fucked up. You would just at random go inhibit, inhibit, inhibit. It's not all perfectly calculated to who really needs to be inhibited. In other words, it's fair, even if it's, why me? I should be amplified, not inhibited. But then again, I'm doing it on a one-to-one basis where I want 250 people to talk to that also have 250 people to talk to. That's the kind of network that I'd like to be in. I don't want to be in a broadcast network part that goes out and gets broadcast into a million neurons like, I don't know, anybody, good or bad. Daily Show, Democracy Now, CNN, Fox, whatever. I think it's fine that some neurons should go out that way, or some groups of neurons should be bundles that go out that way. And I don't want to be that. But I do want to take part in the overall network. And if the feeling in the network is, hey, something's wrong here, you would expect extra inhibition realm, domain type language. Like, stop what you're doing, And even if it's bullshit, like, hey, you shouldn't do this because you're old or you're young or your lips are too big or you shouldn't this or you only have one eyebrow, which normally I would have. My wife likes to keep that separated, which is I don't agree with, but I love her, so whatever, we go with that. And the point is, even if it's weird or bigoted or wrong inhibition language, really you got to remember it's just neurotransmitters. It's just they're saying inhibit. This is the only way I know. I'm sorry. You're fat. You're skinny. That's all they know. But if they knew more, they might be going, hey, a counter-introductional postmodern thing was inaccurate and counterproductive. Who knows what they would really be saying? The point is, you have a social structure generating a feeling that generates the desire to inhibit others. Right? And, fair enough. So that's topic number 1. All right. Now, topic number 2, I don't know how much I'm going to spend on this. And I've been thinking about it. And I'm going to say a few things about a few things. Okay. So, the video I did trying to reply to Gary on physics, it ended with me, I think it was Dynacat Loves Me, who I think of as Dynacat, who maybe I should use by a different name. Dynacat was the cat, not the person that Dynacat loves, but I think it's a good way to remember Dynacat. I think said, this seems like an exercise in masochism. Sorry if it was someone else. An exercise in masochism. And when I saw it, though, I read exercise in sadism. So, exercise in masochism, I'm torturing myself by going through this. But I read as an exercise in sadism, which would be me being mean to Gary. And I struggle over this a lot because people like Gary, or, over here, Snake Plisskenist, Ray, I've been talking to for 10, 15 years. Uh-oh.